Okay, so here's my Roland MT-32. Just to get this thing to work wasn't as easy as you might think, so there's a couple of different things I needed. So as you can see here on the back side, the output is kind of not typical for home consumer equipment. It's more like typical for professional instruments. It doesn't use RCA or anything like that. It uses 1/4-inch jacks, and specifically you've got two mono jacks here. So how can I connect this to my speakers or my stereo equipment or my PC? Well, I didn't find any pre-made cable I needed, so I decided to make my own. Well, and since I don't really like making splitter cables because they tend to be kind of brittle, I just made two mono cables with 1/4-inch jack on one side and RCA jack on the other side. Now the next thing I could do is just use this connector and then plug in an RCA extension cord and plug that into my home stereo system, or I can just use this piece and that will connect both the cables together and I can get a stereo 1/8-inch jack output, and then I can use an extension cord and connect that to my PC. So here's the setup for connecting to a hi-fi tower. So we plug in the 1/4-inch jacks, then it goes to this piece, and then we have an extension cord and just plug this to the stereo system. So what I'm going to be using here is a little bit different. So I use this special piece here that takes two RCA jacks and gives me 1/8-inch jack. Actually, you can buy things like these that have 1/8-inch jacks as inputs, but in fact those I don't think these are the same because they actually are meant to connect microphone and headset into and produce a 4-pin jack for your phone. So that's a bit different. So I needed to use this one actually. And then I have an extension cord and I just plug in this to my PC. Of course, before we can even think of getting some music, we need to power this thing up. But my adapter only supports 120 volts. Now I thought of using a different adapter, however, it says here, use Roland ACB adapter only. Well, okay. So what I decided to do, I just bought this voltage converter that converts from 230 volts to 120, and at the same time it gives you the US style socket. Now this thing is pretty big and heavy, and it also makes an annoying noise, which is kind of a bummer if you're trying to listen to music. So it's time to plug this thing in. So the plug for the adapter goes here, and the adapter goes to the wall socket. Okay. This thing makes a pretty audible hum. It's annoying by itself, but if you're listening to music, that's even worse. Okay, now this goes here. Okay, and it's time for the moment of truth. So it's time to turn this thing on. Yes! It's on. I love the LCD display. So let's try something. Okay, so the volume knob is clearly working. Now the thing is, yes, so you can see most of the buttons don't actually work. So some of them are working, some of them seem to work sometimes, but in general, yeah. So I guess this is something I will need to look into. The good news is we don't really need the buttons just to play music. All we need is to connect it to a computer. So what I'll be using here to connect it to my modern laptop is this USB MIDI cable. This one is, well, it's kind of a no-name, and it was pretty cheap too. But it was the only one they had available in my shop. So the guy said it was crap. He didn't explain why. Actually, I'm suspecting it has a somewhat higher latency, at least as one problem, but for games this is just fine. Now this can be a little bit tricky, so I'm not sure if you can see the label on the MIDI connector which says out, and apparently I need to connect this to the input port on the Roland MT-32. So the other side of the cable plugs straight into the USB socket on my laptop, right? So that was easy enough. Now my laptop doesn't have an line input, so I'm going to be using this external Sound Blaster card. So you plug that into USB. So what I need to do is plug this mini USB cable here in the back, plug the other side into my laptop. Then I need to plug the Roland MT-32 into the line input of my sound card, and then I need to plug my speakers to the headphone output. There. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to send some MIDI to the device. So the easiest way to do that is to start VMPK, which is a little virtual keyboard, and we need to check the MIDI connection. So output is set to USB MIDI interface 0. Now play, but we don't hear any sound. As I'm typing or pressing keys on the keyboard, you can see the little LED lighting, so we're getting MIDI messages on channel 2, but clearly we don't hear anything. So if we go to the volume control and look at the input devices, and we look at the Sound Blaster stereo, and if I played some keys, you can see that it's actually, we are getting some signal here. So the only problem is we don't hear it. Well, that's because with pulse audio, you actually need to enable loopback to get to hear what you're recording. So how we can do that, it's, well, not very intuitive. So we need to do PACMD, add module loopback, latency ms equals 5. No, clearly not. So here's the command. I'm just going to copy it. Okay, now if we go to our recording devices, we need to select from where the loopback is recording and select Sound Blaster X5, and we can check playback. We are playing back the loopback. You need to check that you want to see all streams, both recording and playback. So now, yes, it actually works. You can even change the channel to hear some different patches. Yes. Okay, so if I play like this, the problem is you're hearing the MT-32 through my speakers and my microphone, and so to get you better sound, I'm just going to switch the recording input to my line-in jack. Okay, so let's try something else. Let's go to DOSBox configuration directory, and then so in the MIDI section, we need to have a MIDI device set to also, and the MIDI config needs to be set to the port which corresponds to the sequencer device of our USB MIDI. So to check that, I can look at proc a sound sequencer clients, and you can see that client 28 port 0 is a USB MIDI interface. Okay, now let's start DOSBox. Okay. Okay, let's start Civilization. What is the cute message? You can see which channels have the activity. So I'd like you to enjoy the original sound as clear as possible, so I'll just switch the audio input directly to the line input. Okay, that sounds great. So, here's another of my favorite games. Although, admittedly, in this one, the MT-32 version is not perfect, but still very nice. Okay, thank you for watching. So next time maybe we will try to get the buttons working, so that will require some troubleshooting. Till next time.